What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Friday, time to take a look at my favorite underdog plays this week. We were really close to hitting on our big play last week. We predicted the neighbor's nuke, but unfortunately, while Pickens still went higher than his projection, we needed one of those two downfield PIs to be catches, not PIs. We would have hit for at least 25x if he applied any sort of small boost. So tough pill to swallow, but we will be back this week. We've got some really good solo picks I like, and another 25x combo, even with zero boost applied. So let's start off with that, because I think the big win is fun to shoot for. We're not going to put a ton of money on this one every week because, you know, the odds are still very, very low that we actually can hit. The goal is really only to hit on one of these this season, because if we do, we are guaranteed to be profitable. So no team has allowed more passing yards than the New England Patriots through 2 weeks. In fact, no team has allowed within 64 passing yards of the Patriots through 2 weeks. It is possible we get Christian Gonzalez back this week, but I feel like Gonzalez is going to set out one more game. I'm recording this before they practice on Friday. We'll see. He was limited on Wednesday and Thursday, but those are his only two practices since August. And so I don't know. I feel like you need at least one full practice. So if he's not a full go on Friday, there's no way he's playing. But I feel like you need more than that. I think you need more than one full practice after missing multiple weeks with an injury. So I think next week is when he returns. Regardless, though, if he does come back, he's going to be on Metcalf. He'll be shadowing Metcalf. We are taking higher on Calvin Austin this week. The Patriots have historically really struggled with speed wide receivers. Calvin Austin's out there for 90+% of the snaps. He's only commanded 4.5% fewer targets than DK Metcalf. He's also a big play threat, and only one team has allowed more passing yards per drop back through 2 weeks than the New England Patriots. Calvin Austin's underdog projection right now is only 38.5 receiving yards, which is like a fine projection on average. I think it should be closer to like 41 or 42, but we're not looking for on average. Given how explosive Calvin Austin is, he for sure has a much higher ceiling than that. Even if he only brings in 4 receptions, he can go for 70 yards. He did that in week 1 on 4 receptions. He had 1 catch last week, but went for 22 yards. Like, he only needs a couple hits, a couple receptions to get way higher than 38.5. On the other side of this game, I know half of you are going to throw up when you hear this, but we're taking TreVeyon Henderson. To be fair, we are 2-0 through 2 weeks picking Henderson this season, so you can't get too mad at me. We have been correct back-to-back weeks. We're going to try and make it 3-0 on Henderson. This is the first time, though, we're going after his rushing projection. He was semi-benched last week because of struggles in pass protection. And I do have some concerns, even though he's a good pass catcher overall. He just had a bad week, or pass blocker overall. And he's great as a pass catcher. That's what we've been attacking him with. I have some concerns that this week in particular, he might see a reduced role in that area, and maybe they just give Stevenson most of those third down snaps, and Stevenson's already been playing on a lot of passing downs. The thing is, number one, I don't think they're going to feature Stevenson, so if they're shifting more of that workload over to him, I think it's possible they shift some of the carries over to Henderson. And they also know that not only is TreVeyon Henderson their most explosive player on the entire team, not just in the running back room, but also they know they have to build his confidence. This is a player that they're going to need to win football games. They're going to need him playing well and being confident. So you can't just completely bench him the following week, not give him any touches. Only 4 teams have allowed more rushing yards so far than the Steelers, and only the Dolphins have allowed more rush attempts. Obviously, I'm not counting the Thursday night game. That would be very unfair, talking about the Dolphins being like, oh, they've given up the most because they've played 3 games. Everyone else has played 2. So not counting that, only the Dolphins have allowed more rush attempts per game than the Steelers. And the thing is, like, the Steelers' defense overall might just be pathetic. Like, it just might be really bad this season. They allowed 182 rushing yards to the Jets in week 1. They only ran for 100 yards the following week. Then in week 2, they allow 117 rushing yards to the Seahawks, who looked horrible. Like the Seahawks looked like they had a horrible rushing attack in week 1. They looked fantastic last week. Like, remember the difference between Ken Walker in week 1 versus week 2? Well, one big difference is they're playing the Steelers in week 2. They allowed the Jets to score 32 points against them, Seattle to score 31 points against them. Those two teams only scored 10 and 13 points in their other two matchups. Like, there is a chance here, and not a small chance, a decent chance, that New England can score 30 points in this game. And if they do get up, they're going to lean on the rushing attack. They're not going to be a team this season that gets up and just keeps chucking the ball around. When they get a lead, they're going to go run heavy. Henderson has an underdog projection this week of 23.5 rushing yards. Okay, the projection is not 50. The projection is 23.5 rushing yards. He could get there on 4 or 5 rush attempts. And given how explosive of a runner he is, there is absolutely a room for ceiling there. And it correlates beautifully. If New England can get up, they trust Henderson a little bit on the ground, he can get going, they're going to lean on him. Right? Like, if he starts ripping off 5, 6, 7 yards each run, they're going to keep feeding him the ball. If he's successful, he's going to rack up those rush attempts, rack up those yardage. And if they're winning, that correlates really well with the Pittsburgh side needing to throw the ball at a higher rate. We already know that it's a very much a pass funnel for New England. Very good at stopping the run, not so good at stopping the pass. So Pittsburgh would very much lean pass heavy, and you only need a couple receptions for Calvin Austin. Now, to get to 25x, obviously we cannot take higher than 23.5 rushing yards for TreVeyon Henderson. We're going to need to increase that projection a little bit to get to 25x. But if you take Calvin Austin higher than 59.5 receiving yards and TreVeyon Henderson higher than 59.5 rushing yards, that is 27.8x with 0 boosts applied. If you're feeling really bold, you're like, Nick, I think they both hit for like 35-yard plays, right? Maybe Calvin Austin only has 3 receptions, but one of them comes deep downfield. He gets to 70 receiving yards. If Henderson breaks off a 30 or 40-yard run, they give him some workload, he can get to 70 rushing yards. If you take higher than 69.5 for each of them, that is 67.3x with no boost applied, meaning you can likely get 100x on this weekend because they're probably going to give you some sort of boost in the lobby. Obviously understand that a 100x pick is super unlikely to happen, but I really do think there's a shot here. The matchup is great for both of them. They are both highly explosive players. It does not take that many receptions or carries for either one of them to hit here, even if you wanted to increase the projection to 70 for both of them. So I really like this one. And if you apply boost, you can get this really, really high. Just don't put a bunch on it. All right, that's the big boy. Let's fire off some solo picks I like. You can do whatever you want with them. I also like Ashton Jeanty higher than just 55.5 rushing yards. The Commanders are a fairly neutral matchup for running backs, but I think this is more so a bet on talent play. Also, the first 2 matchups for Jeanty were against the Patriots, who, as I just said, are one of the largest pass funnels in the league. They've allowed by far the most passing yards per game and the second most yards per dropback, but they've allowed the 3rd fewest rushing yards per game, the 3rd fewest rushing yards per attempt. Then they played the Chargers, who aren't quite like a funnel for anything. They're just really good overall, and they forced the Raiders into a very negative game script in the second half, so they couldn't really run the ball in the second half of that game. But this week, despite being on the road, the Raiders are only 3.5-point underdogs against either Marcus Mariota or a very hobbled Jaden Daniels. There's for sure a chance that like the Raiders straight up win this game. At the very least, this should be a competitive game. I don't think the Commanders are going to have like a 14 to 17 point lead for the entire second half. I think this game will be within striking distance all time for the Raiders, and there's also a chance they win it. And if you get a positive game script for the Raiders here, I just think Jeanty is far too talented to ever have a projection this low. And so in what I also think is a decent spot for him, I really like it, and I wouldn't mind if you wanted to go off on this one. If you wanted to push him up to 100 yards, I don't know exactly what the multiplier is on that one, but I can promise you it's really high, and Jeanty is an explosive player that does not need 30 touches to get to 100 yards. He can get there in 17 touches because he can easily bust off a 30, 40, 50-yard run. Those are the players where you really want to boost their projections when you can. Obviously, the odds are lower, but when you can boost that projection, you can get some really, really nice payouts. Again, 55.5 is the one I would personally take, but if you'd like to go higher, I like that as well. Josh Jacobs, next one, also like lower than 77.5 rushing yards from him. Despite facing the Bengals and the Ravens over the first 2 weeks, no team has allowed fewer rushing yards than the Browns. And no team has allowed even close to as low as their 2.07 yards per carry allowed. Josh Jacobs is awesome. His role is awesome. The game script should be awesome. But 78 rushing yards is still a very high projection. And the Browns have now held Chase Brown, Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry to a combined 79 rushing yards. So I don't know. Like, yes, he can go higher than this, but I do not think it happens north of 50% of the time. I think there's only maybe a 35 to 40% chance that he goes higher than 77.5 rushing yards. It should be lower. It should be closer to like the upper 60s, in my opinion. The Packers themselves also have an elite defense. They're not really one that we like to target very much, but they are a bit of a tight end funnel. So on the other side of this game, I do like Harold Fannin Jr. higher than 33.5 receiving yards. The Packers have the second best run defense in the NFL through 2 weeks. They're also a bottom 5 matchup if you look for wide receiver targets. They are the toughest matchup for wide receiver yards per reception. But they are a top 5 matchup for tight end targets, and they're close to average in efficiency allowed to tight ends. Cleveland is not going to be able to run the ball this weekend. They are not going to find that much success when they throw the ball to their wide receivers. But when they end up finding themselves in a hole, I do think the tight ends are where they should be looking matchup-wise. I think Fannin Jr. is heavily involved in this game plan, should have a good chunk of targets. He goes higher than 33.5 receiving yards, well north of 55. I would say like 60 to 65% of the time. Another one I like is Travis Hunter, higher than 35.5 receiving yards. He's definitely been disappointing this season, highly disappointing last week, and the yards per reception has been just like insanely low. Like, I don't understand how it could be as low as it is, but I think that's more randomness than anything. We know he's a freak athlete, right? I would get it if like Travis Hunter was like super slow, super unathletic, and you're like, man, he's just some like low ADOT merchant that's going to like rack up receptions and not do anything with them. We all know he's a freak athlete. We all know he's not going to have 6.1 yards per reception on the season. He's going to break off a long play. He's going to hit deep downfield at some point. We also know that no team has given their wide receivers more volume this season than the Jacksonville Jaguars. And while the Texans have a strong defense on the other side, they've graded out as a league average defense against the pass so far this season. We also know that not only is Brian Thomas Jr. working through a wrist injury, but he's also going to get shadow coverage from Derek Stingley this week. 35.5 receiving yards isn't exactly asking for a lot from Travis Hunter this week. And again, there's no way 6.1 yards per reception is not going to continue. They're not going to have Diami Brown and Parker Washington as their 2 leading wide receivers in yardage this season. Once that volume starts to flow over to Travis Hunter, people are going to remember why we were so excited to draft him this year. Final pick over today is Bo Nix, lower than 219.5 passing yards. I don't know what's going on with the Denver passing attack, but I don't like it. They seem all out of sorts, and he's really struggled throwing the ball. And it's against 2 defenses so far that we're not expecting to be elite this season. This week, Denver plays at the Chargers. We went over this earlier in the video. This is a defense that is just very good, but they've allowed the second fewest passing yards per drop back. And that's despite playing Patrick Mahomes, despite playing a Raiders team that threw for 362 yards in their non-Chargers matchup this year. Like, the Raiders are going to have a really high-end offense this season at times. They're going to have games where they throw the ball a lot, or they're highly productive through the air. The Chargers have absolutely stymied both the Patrick Mahomes and Geno Smith so far this season, and they're a defense that we thought would be good. This isn't like, oh, this is a defense that like we thought might be okay, and maybe the Chiefs aren't as good as we thought. Maybe the Raiders aren't as good as we thought, and so they'll go being as bad as we thought for the Chargers defense. Coming into the year, we figured that the Chargers would be one of the best defenses in the NFL. So while you might not love the Chiefs passing attack or love the Raiders passing attack, there's still two passing attacks that are good at football, are probably above average passing attacks. And the Chargers are like, no, we're going to drop you down to the second fewest passing yards per dropback. They're a good defense. I don't have a lot of confidence in Bo Nix this weekend. So if you want to tail any of these, feel free to do so. And if you haven't signed up yet for Underdog, I have great news for you. New users who sign up with promo code FFA can play just $5 and win $50 in bonus cash. I would just use that bonus cash to tail our big pick every single week. That way, it's just bonus funds if you happen to not hit on it throughout the season. And also, if you sign up with the promo code FFA, you get an email the following morning giving you access to my weekly rankings and my detailed projections for the rest of the season. So if you want to just go into detailed projections, see how I have every single projected for receptions, yards, touchdowns, pass attempts, completions, all that sort of stuff, and find your own picks that you like, you'll be able to do that as well. So good luck to everyone this weekend. Please leave a like if you are still here. Please subscribe if you are new, especially for those of you on Spotify. But I'll catch you all on the Monday video for Week 4 Waiver Wire.